Why your value is infinite.
even if your contribution is worthless.
What can we learn about leadership in life and business from squirrels and Navy SEALs?
Hi, I'm Caitlin Kogan-Domner.
And I'm Lucas Root.
We are the founders of Ecstatic Way, and today we are going to take you through the 6 pillars of community-led leadership.
Strategy, communication, teamwork, leadership, coaching, and community.
Let's start with the first one, strategy. Strategy is when we begin with the end in mind. We can see where we are going, and we are planning our journey with intention. It's important when you are going to step into leadership of a community that you see the goal and map your path towards it.
Our brains are actually really amazing math processing tools. Even though you don't think about the math, our brains do it automatically. We're designed from the ground up to be able to throw a spear and hit an animal that's running. The math that's involved in that is really crazy. So throwing a spear is the perfect example of strategy. Now, the same thing works in strategy in life, seeing a goal and going to it. Strategy in business, seeing a goal and moving towards it. Here's a counterexample of where strategy fails miserably. How many times have you been driving down the road and you see a squirrel there and it waits until the last possible minute, darts in front of the car, and you have to slam on the brakes, and you're like, you could have picked any time to run across the road and you picked wrong.
So, when you are a human leader, use that amazing brain of yours to see where you're going, plan the trajectory, and hit your target every time.
Next up, we have complex communication. The reason we call it complex communication is to differentiate from simple communication. One great example of simple communication is white-tailed deer. They wave their tails, the ones around them know that there's danger, they all run off. It's the simplest communication out there. It's one that we know well, and we named the animal after it. Conversely, Navy SEALs are my favorite example of a really complex communication system. They've taken battle orders and commands and they've distilled it down into really finely tuned hand signals. When we watch them on movies, or those of you who are actually Navy SEALs, you know exactly what I'm talking about. These hand signals can contain a lot of information in a very simple tool. It is complex communication done extremely well.
When you're a leader, you can't simply transmit messages and assume that they're going to be understood. In every communication, there are filters, from the filter of how you understand what you're saying and the filter that it has to go through in order for it to be understood. Every single person on your team is bringing their own unique biases, prejudice, and filters into every single conversation that you have. So your job as a leader is to be aware of what is not being said. Are you attuned to the emotion and the energy of your tribe so that you can lead it successfully and make sure that you're meeting your team's needs at every single level? Okay, so we've talked about squirrels, we've talked about Navy SEALs. We're also going to talk about why we think pencils are a sign of the downfall of humanity. But first, we're going to talk about teamwork.
Teamwork is collaboration for a shared success. It's being skilled enough that you can complete any job that you're doing in pursuit of your goal. And it's not just being skilled, it's trusting in the skill of your team members to make sure that they're going to be able to do the same as you, complete the job so that you all can continue moving forward towards the goal. Now, here's something about teamwork that I think most people misunderstand. A lot of people think that if one of your team members is not able to hold up their end of the bargain and you step in to help, that's teamwork. It's not teamwork. That's actually leadership.
Which is our fourth pillar, fluid leadership. This is where you are, because you've built this trust with your team, now you understand that anybody in the tribe actually can assume the mantle of leadership when it's the right time to do so. So often, in our experience, leadership and authority are synonymous, and people have to fight in order to earn their power. And then when they finally achieve that power, they hold on to it. They clutch it so tightly that you can't pry their fingers off of it. This is static leadership. Leadership that's dead and not dynamic. Instead, we want to introduce fluid leadership, the idea that every single person on the team is equally ready, willing, and able to assume the mantle of leadership when it's the appropriate time. You don't need to pull the baton out of someone's hands. You just need to be ready to catch it when the other person is ready to let it go.
You know, Caitlin, it sounds to me like you're describing leadership, or at least static leadership, as if it's heavy.
It is. Yeah, I think any of us who have actually taken on leadership understand that the sense of responsibility that comes with that can feel really heavy. And in static leadership, it can also be extremely isolating. It's very difficult to talk to people when you are the leader and you're in a hierarchical system. There's a famous quote that says, anybody who's qualified to lead is probably smart enough to not want to. And what that shows is that the people who are best suited to lead, the ones who truly understand what it means to be a leader, are the least likely to raise their hand because they understand the weight, the expense, the responsibility of that undertaking. Instead, we are advocating a fluid leadership model. So let me illustrate what this looks like inside of two very important partnerships in my life. My husband Michael and I are equal partners in how we do our business, how we raise our kids, how we manage our finances. It's gotten to the point that if I start dinner and walk away because I need to take a phone call, he will smell that it's cooking before it burns and be able to jump in, finish cooking it, and serve it in on the table on time. This is an example of how fluid leadership can work within your home. Lucas and I have been able to find that fluid leadership in a business partnership. We can be interchangeable on our coaching calls. What I say to our coaching clients and what he says to the coaching clients are exchangeable so that if I'm sick, he can cover, or if he's sick, I can cover. And it sounds kind of strange to have that level of redundancy, but as a leader, it is such a relief to know that not everything is on your shoulders all the time, every day. What about you? Have you experienced static leadership and how heavy that can be? Have you experienced fluid leadership and how freeing that can be? We'd love to hear in the comments your own stories of how this shows up in your life. The other thing that's really important is, are you teaching the next generation to lead? Which leads us to the fifth pillar.
Fifth pillar is coaching. Coaching in this context isn't about charging executives $100,000 a year contracts. Rather, it's about amassing mastery in skills and making sure that you're in a position, both mentally and with your relationships inside your community, to pass those skills on so that the next generation continues that mastery. See, we as humans, we have our position as peak predators in the world specifically because of the skills that we have amassed and our capacity to pass it on. Coaching in this context is all about that, passing it on, becoming experts at strategy, complex communication, teamwork, and fluid leadership, and making sure that the next generation is ready to carry that forward.
And this works at home when you're educating your kids on how to live well. It works at your business when you're teaching your team not just this is how we do things, but this is who we are. This is where you're not just passing on a set of skills, you're indoctrinating them in your cultural values. The best example I've come up with is my kids. If you ask my kids, what does it mean to be a Domer? They'll be like, crazy. So the number one thing that they self-identify with as being a Domer is crazy. And it's gotten to the point where that identity of I am a Domer, and that means that you are part of this crazy tribe. Cora is so loath to let go of her last name and the identity that she's created around this, that she's told us that she will not be taking her husband's name when she gets married. He will be taking hers because she is bringing him into our community and the identity that goes with that. And that concept of community is actually the sixth pillar. Community is what ties all of these pieces together. You cannot be a leader without a community. The lone wolf is not a thing. You need your pack. And this is where, if you don't have this framework for understanding what community-led leadership is and looks like, it's going to be very difficult for you to cultivate the sense of shared identity that you need to. It's this thing we call community, that allows humans to have infinite value, and why it doesn't matter what you're contributing, because it's no longer about what you produce, how many boxes you check, how many widgets you build. It's about who you are as a human being. that you are providing value to the community as a human. And that identity of being truly human is what's going to change the world. Which is great news, because this very same system that made pencils might be the thing that destroys our humanity. You want to talk about that?
Pencils are the pinnacle of human civilization. Think about it for a moment. We get the wood from one country. We get the graphite from a different country. We get the paint from another country. We get the rubber from another country. And they all have to come together in China to be assembled into this pencil, and then they get shipped to you in your hand. The supply chain, the system that puts all of this together, makes it possible for you to have this pencil, is absolutely extraordinary. And what it has done is it has made every single piece of that pencil, the paint, the wood, the graphite, the rubber, and it arriving in your hand, completely faceless. Because it's faceless, that means that every piece of it is replaceable. We have taken the humanity out of our economy.
We have actually created a machine that's turned us into machines. It's given us the illusion of independence. Whereas before, when we were surrounded by people who had our back and helped us grow our food or hunt our food, we understood who we were connected with. And that relationship created our sense of safety, security, well-being, and identity. We knew who we were because we were in relationship. But when we move into a faceless economy, we no longer know where we fit. We think that we need to be self-reliant. We're told we're supposed to be independent. It's a virtue for us to be independent, but it's a myth. It's impossible. A man will go to a job and he will work for somebody else who will pay him a paycheck, and he will use that paycheck in a currency that he did not back, and he will take it to the supermarket and he will buy food that he did not grow, and he will drive home on a road that he did not pave, and he will go into a house and turn on a light for electricity that he did not generate. He does not know that his existence, his solitary existence, is supported by hundreds and thousands of humans. And when we can instead move back to a human economy, an economy that values the human individual, then every single one of us is no longer defined by our contribution and our ability to produce a task or a product or a widget. Instead, it comes back to who we are as a person, and we get to really take our humanity back.
It doesn't matter what you do. It's who you are within community that makes you infinitely valuable. Tap into your community leadership potential by clicking the link below and booking a Clarity and Alignment session.
Because you are infinitely valuable.